everyone. Thank you for coming to listen to me speak. I know there's a lot more you're here for, but thank you for coming. I wanted to give you a little bit of history about my family. My family is not a modern family. It's not something that happened on purpose going into technology. It was an evolution of our original real estate business. My family started off in Iran owning a shoe store. The shoe store was 3,000 retail locations. It was growing quite quickly, but all of that was seized by Iran in '79. So like many Iranians, we had to restart everything in California when we ran away from the government. Then we started a rug store. Yes, I'm an Iranian with a rug store. And the rug store is still going today. And what we realized is we have to do something more. So my father started a small company called Chemtex, where we sell plastics from ExxonMobil to Latin America. We also sell water in Spain. But what's most relevant about what we do is our real estate business. And we have two big ones called 1010 and Hollywood Production Center. And these are something more than just real estate. And even Plug and Play, the accelerator program we started off as a real estate platform. So the buildings that we create are communities in order to make the space more interesting. The spaces we rent are all short-term, and they all are about building a community. In 1010's case, we'll have a live, work, play community where people will make music on the top floor, then they will have an office on the bottom floor and live in the middle. And we believe that making a real estate office more fun is what really, really makes something special. And that's how we came up with the idea of Plug and Play and the other real estate portfolios. That being said, through the success of our real estate and our other businesses, we decided to start investing. Investing in technology was, again, because of our old-fashioned nature. My grandfather would say, why would I invest in the stock market? If I invest in the stock market, I can't tell the CEO what to do. If I tell him what to do, he won't listen to me. I own one share. But if I invest in a startup, the CEO will answer my calls. I can help him. I have say in what he does. And maybe I can become more successful through that. And we started investing in the early 90s, and we invested in a few good companies. Now we've invested in over 1,600 companies that are currently in our portfolio, not including the ones that have exited. And some of the best startups we have are on this list here. Dropbox was our best investment so far. We invested at a $4 million valuation, and we exited our shares at a $4 billion valuation, and they didn't raise money in between. So for every dollar you put in, you pull out 1,000. So that was incredibly lucky. We have had nothing like that to date, or since then, but the other ones are quite successful as well. And one of the things we're good at is judging people. And we don't understand technology as well as others, but one of the things we do understand is how to build a good team and what that means for a startup. And we've taken that and brought it to what Plug and Play does currently. So how do you get the chance to invest in good tech? So startups actually don't take your money easily. It is not as easy as finding the next Dropbox and saying, here's $100,000. They have to want your money. And it's not easy to convince them to want your money. So we kept having issues in the beginning on how do we convince a startup to let me invest. And it's not easy. My father would take me to barbecues where we would be serving kebab to these 22-year-old founders and tell me, become his friend so I can invest in the startup. He tried that with Larry and Sergey. They did not become my friend, but we still were able to invest later on. And the reason we were able to invest is because we promised them we have a good network, which was quite difficult to do, but we had a building in downtown Palo Alto, which we consider our lucky building. We started there as a family, and Google started there. And when you're a landlord, the startup is nice to you. They're not nice to you because you have a better network or you know something. They're nice to you because you control the roof above their heads. And we were able to invest in Google because of that, in PayPal because of that, and another company called Danger, which ended up becoming Android. So that idea of owning a building and leveraging it to make investments is what set up the idea of plug and play today. So the plug and play that we built, my father's goal was, let's create Silicon Valley in a box. Now, of course, Silicon Valley is a vision, it's a goal. It has nothing to do with the actual location now. But the ecosystem we're trying to create is the same as the original vision for the building in the valley. And the building initially had venture capitalists, so let's try to get investors to come. Then we realized, hey, our building's not very fun. It's not in the main street, it's not in the city. How do we make it fun? So we started throwing events. We threw events around mentors, we threw events around governments, we threw events around universities, and then we realized we can get a lot more from these people. So when the universities come, I can find good talent for my startups. I can get good startups from these universities. So a lot more was being built. And of course, we realized that our startups needed customers, and it's annoying when a startup reaches out to the same customer time and time again. So what if we own this relationship with our corporations or our customers and help mitigate the conversations between startups and corporations? That allows us to be a one-stop shop or a one-stop ecosystem for startups that come to us. And of course, we've expanded since then. So what we plan to do is we plan to work with corporations and startups, deal with the timing issue, because for a corporation, 1 or 2 days means nothing, but for a startup, it means the world. So we need to help translate these two worlds in order for them to work together. And to do that, there helps to have someone in the middle. Now, it's not all we do, and we do a lot more, and I'll get into that shortly. So Plug and Play, as you guys heard, is an accelerator platform. That is one of the things we do. We help startups grow by bringing them into this ecosystem and helping them grow through that. But that isn't everything. We have to help our corporations work with our startups, and now what we do with our corporations is the core to our business. We work with corporations in order to organize their interest areas, to make them known among startups, and to keep the reputation of the corporations up during this process. Because if you have a bad reputation amongst the small startup community, then what happens in the future? And of course, as you guys know, my family does invest in tech, and we do bring our friend investors to come invest with us. And we can do that because we don't compete in the same size as our investors do, and there's plenty of room to invest in tech. So Silicon Valley, again, is not the only place for technology. It might have been 10, 20 years ago. But we believe that we have to go out into the world to find these good technology startups. And if we don't go out there, we're going to miss a lot of opportunities. Also, our corporations aren't always based in the Silicon Valley. And in order to do a cultural specific approach, we have started expanding to over 20 locations. We want to expand past this, but we're doing this in order to strengthen our ecosystem. And by doing that, we can help corporations and startups work better together. Currently, we have over 300 corporations as partners. We're happy to have Figaro as a partner as well in a program called Smart Cities. But this allows us to create an executive network where you can learn from other industries so non-competing industries on how they have structured their innovation or external innovation programs. We can learn the interest areas of these corporations and what's coming next. And sometimes what Coca-Cola wants might be similar to what Pepsi wants, but sometimes they don't know exactly what's going on. So if we throw events with 10 food companies looking at startups together, it is a better encompassing program than just one corporation. And because of that, that gives us strength. We currently look at 16 different industries. These industries are specific to the corporations that we work with. And in smart cities, which is one specific vertical, they also look at everything. And there's overlap with every industry that we work with. I mean, of course, in supply chain and food, there's a lot of overlap. And in smart cities, we'll talk about the overlap coming up. So through our locations and through our team, we have created a really large ecosystem. This ecosystem is global. We don't concentrate our efforts in one location. We're trying to figure out what country has the best startups. Right now, Tomas is telling me that it's Paris. But for us, we want to find startups everywhere and then bring them to our corporations. The people we work with in the corporation level are world-class. And startups also need to be world-class. It doesn't matter if your startup's coming from Israel or California. You need to judge them at the level that you want, and we do that by looking worldwide. So what Plug and Play does now is we've created this ecosystem where we have end-to-end solutions for our corporations. What's most interesting about us and what makes us different than other people is the part in yellow. We want to make sure that the corporations work with the startups. And that is how we attract the startups. We require for corporations to actually use the startups, and if they don't have traction on both ends, then we failed. So we want to make sure that we help corporations create the scope of interest to develop the plan for the year and actually go into usage or implementation of the startup. And it's not easy to attract good startups into an accelerator program. So our Smart Cities program launched in the last few years. We have one in Paris, which is great. We're happy to be partners with Figaro and Rent. It's a growing program, and it is growing all across the world. In the Smart Cities program, we have an issue that is going to happen with managing cities. 60% of the world population is in cities, and this is going to be a continuing issue. We have 2.5 million people moving into cities, and we'll need to find an efficient way to control them. The amount of data coming out of these smart cities is staggering, and startups and corporations will need to work together in order to find a way to do it. A lot of the technology that will come up with this hasn't been invented yet, and we are looking for startups to do that. The populations of cities, as I mentioned, is growing. By 2025, 68% of the world will be living inside of cities. Every time the population of the cities grows, we'll have new problems. And in the past, I mean, of course, we had problems with sewage, and now we're going to start having problems with different kinds of infrastructure. For example, with air quality or control or energy. And in cities currently, we have to find a way to manage population flow and to see what's going to happen. And without that, we're going to have issues. And Smart Cities is really trying to work with different parts of the organization or governments, people, as well as corporations in order to manage this problem. The total spending on smart cities is staggering. This is a figure that we find that says $238 billion will be spent in 2025. I think it is low. The smart cities is going to completely keep growing year after year. I know I made my home as smart as possible. I have 40 devices in my house in order to try to understand some of these trends, but that's just in my house. How many are we going to have on the streets? How can we make the streets lights smarter to understand what's going on under them, to figure out, if they should turn off or they should become more efficient or they should dim at certain times? What else can we do with the power that's connected to these lights? So sometimes we'll have something where it is hearing the sound under it and making use of that information in order to better manage the population of these cities. And of course, this isn't just targeting cities, it includes all parts of the human population. So, smart cities encompasses everything. What Plug and Play has grown into allows us to also encompass more about the interest of what smart cities includes. And mobility is a big part of that. We work with different partners in the automotive space that are looking at this smart cities issue. We're looking at car sharing devices, self-driving cars. We're looking at how to park the cars or how to make them more interesting, how they can talk to each other, and how they can become a little bit more connected. Now, automotive companies aren't enough. We need them to talk to everything. It's not enough to just have smart cars on the street, because if it's not talking to the street lights, then what makes them actually smart? How do we actually become 100% efficient? So Internet of Things is a big part of that. And we work with people like Man and Hummel in order to find the best way to make everything more connected. We have been working with smart lights for years, but one of the issues we're having is, how do I get all 4 of these verticals to work together? It is not easy to work with one of the big energy companies. So we have to find a way to create a partnership with all 4 of these verticals together. Here in Paris, we're concentrating on real estate and connected homes in order to bring that connectivity to the other verticals that are trying. And we believe that with a platform like ours, we can start making some of these changes. Some of the trends floating around in smart cities, it includes a little bit of everything. Of course, the environment is becoming more and more important. We just started a program with the Alliance to End Plastic Waste, and we're trying to do everything we can in order to become more sustainable. And we want to make sure our cities that create a lot of the waste in the world become more sustainable. And that includes solar panels or electric charging vehicles. And again, electric cars are a huge problem in cities, because where do we charge them? And we're looking for solutions, and some of our startups have come up with these. Building automation is a big issue. How can we make old real estate smarter? We work with a lot of startups, and they come to us in Sunnyvale at Plug and Play, and they say, hey, let me automate your building. And we take them downstairs, and the entire AC system is still done with tubes, and we have no electric meters. And they look at it and they're shocked. And what startups don't realize is these technologies that they're bringing aren't a solution for all buildings. They're a solution for the most modern. But what kind of solutions can we bring to most of the buildings in the world that are a little bit older than what they're seeing or what they are creating solutions for? And it is something that we're looking for. Of course, data is a huge issue. The more smart our cities get, the more data we will be getting from these cities. So in all parts of the world, we have to make sure this data is secure. And we also have to create ways to find this. So I worked for a startup called Barzo that had within video search. So any video you would take, it would find a face, it would tell you where that video is being looked at, and it would allow you to search for that through YouTube, which is a little scary. But it is going to be necessary for a government to do if they're going to manage the population in any meaningful way. And it will change the world. In healthcare, the more the population grows, the busier our hospitals will get. And I don't think it's about building more hospitals. It's about how can we make our hospitals more efficient. So a lot of people are looking at continuous care, like Fitbit being acquired, or telemedicine. And it's a big problem that we're dealing with, and we're really going to try to look for startups that are helping. Our buildings, of course, are becoming greener and greener. I work a lot in the food space. Urban farming is a big solution. It is something that could really change the way we look at food. And I don't think it is something that is revolutionary. I mean, we don't know where our food comes from. But what we do know is it takes space to grow it. And in real estate, we're seeing a lot of people starting to rent warehouse space to these urban farms. And the solution isn't that it's farming more efficiently, it's that it saves money when it's coming into the city. And by saving money, it's saving energy and making the city a little bit more efficient. And of course, I've gone over car sharing quite a bit. So, the trends we're seeing in real estate are changing. Real estate used to be location, 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 and now it's becoming different. The need to own real estate is decreasing, or it's becoming so expensive the normal person cannot own the real estate. So we have to make real estate a service. It has to become something more fun than just an apartment. And you can do that with technology. You can do that by making it connected. My family does it by having happy hour every day for free on the roof. And it's quite fun, but everyone will have to start making these changes moving forward. The possible technology in real estate is also quite expansive. It isn't just leasing solutions, which of course are important. In some of the buildings in San Francisco, depending on when you lease, the prices will change. So my little sister leased the place in November, and the prices were cheaper than if she leased in December, because it's more convenient to lease during vacation time than not. And this can help with dynamic pricing of real estate, as well as with managing the tenants while they're currently there. Because the more buildings you own and the more real estate you have, the more you would have to make the leasing software efficient. And of course, it isn't just this that we can do. So, currently, the tools that are available aren't enough for these giant real estate projects. Startups are coming up with them, and we're helping to make these creations. But what is currently out there might not be perfect for you, and we would have to figure out a way to do that. So we can capture data quite easily, but for analytics, it is still developing. And during this process of developing, there will be some testing that is going on, but we believe that real estate will become better and better because of these tests. There are some examples of these smart cities or these real estate projects. These real estate projects are not what we consider smart cities or not what we envision smart cities, but they are a trend that is moving forward. This is a project in Brooklyn that has a ton of IoT devices in it to understand where people are and to better understand what the tenants are doing, but as you can see, it is not finished yet. The verticals that we're working with have to become connected. They all have to work together in order to achieve what we're trying to achieve in smart cities. It is not an easy process, and hopefully these beautiful pictures can become real, but again, it is a process. So how we plan on doing this is to source startups from around the world. We source startups in order to augment external research and development for corporations, as well as investments. We can do this because of our 20 years of experience. We have a lot of inbound startups, but we believe inbound startups aren't the best kind of startups. A good startup doesn't come to you, we have to go to them. And we've created relationships with universities around the world, mainly in the US, but including Harvard or Carnegie Mellon. And we go to these universities and judge business plan competitions and empower students to start companies. And by doing that, you can actually get these students to create new ideas, and students are a little crazy, and usually an entrepreneur is born at this time. It doesn't mean that they're most successful when they're students, but that's a different issue. We've created partnerships with a lot of venture capitalists. One of the companies that's an example of this is Lending Club. Lending Club was brought to us by one of the tier 1 VCs in the Valley or in California. They came to us and they said, this startup isn't ready for us. Can you help grow it to the point where I can invest? Because they want to invest $30 million and we invest, $50,000. So we help the startup grow to the stage that makes sense, and then we take them to corporations and venture capitalists. And of course, through our interest or through our conversations with corporations, we know what to look for. So we have a team of 500 people constantly looking for startups. And the number 10,000 seems like it means the startups will run out eventually. But a startup changes, it's evolving, it expands. And maybe this year it's not interesting for you, but next year it might become interesting. And we're true believers that you have to keep checking on the same startups. So the best startups in our program are startups that we have to go get. And we have to actually convince them to come to us. I have offered startups money and been denied. And our program is separate than our investment strategy. And we do that because we want to make sure our program is right for our clients, which are our corporations. So our programs do not require any equity to be given to us during the process. That means that it's free for the startups to join our program. It is very different than other accelerator programs, and because of that, our core business is not investing. Of course, we do help them invest, but it's not something that they have to take from us. So getting denied does happen, unfortunately. Our clients sometimes like investing in these startups, and we have to help with this process. We've created a mentor network, which nowadays a mentor network doesn't mean much, but it is something important to have. And our global expansion has allowed for startups to grow globally as well. If you're my partner or my startup in the Valley, I can take you to Paris. I can take you to Germany. I can take you to China, which has become a very hot space. And this value add makes us interesting for the startups. The way our partners engage with us, of course, is the accelerator program, which I've mentioned is part of what we do. To see a startup over a 3-month period and get a better understanding of the ecosystem is important, but it's not the most important thing. A corporation or our clients don't care what happens during this program. Getting a prize at the end is wonderful, but it's not what happens for us. And we have to service our clients in order to do that. And for them, the main KPIs are these pilots. And we do them through deal flow sessions and one-on-one educational seminars, and it really helps with the process. Our executive network happens almost ad hoc. So when we are when we have a partnership and we throw in events, then corporations will come to us and meet with each other. It is something that we don't do on purpose because we don't want corporations to sell each other, and it does happen where Panasonic wants to come and sell to the police. But in this ad hoc way, you can look at what parallel industries are doing for their external innovation and help guide you on the right path through their experiences or mistakes. So our main goal today is to get pilots for corporations. Previously, Plug and Play had a lot of tourism where corporations or investors would come to hang out with startups and look at startups. And we don't like that. We don't like it when people come to us and they don't actually have a purpose. So the purpose that we have found is to have pilots or to have actual engagement with startups. And those are the KPIs we stick to ourselves to. An example of that is Previdera, which helped a corporation save $9 million in their pilot. And we can do a lot of that if both sides are ready to engage with each other. Of course, we can help with co-investment, but it's not always in the best interest of one of our clients to invest in a startup. And it's not always in the best interest of our startup to take an investment from someone like Pepsi because you can never work with Coke. And as an investor, you want your startups to succeed. You don't want a startup to be on its own. The last one, acquiring a startup, is always on the table, but it doesn't happen very often. A lot of people will come to us and say, why can't I just acquire this startup? And it's not your business. It's not your job to run a startup. When a startup joins into a corporation, usually they die. And even in Google's case, when they acquired my startup, the startup fizzled out of existence. The startup did facial recognition technology, and as you know, it is illegal to do facial recognition technology in Europe. So they scrapped 60% of the work we had done during the acquisition. But, of course, it's great for the investor if we acquire the startups. Corporations use us for many things. They gain exposure through us, so how could the startup world know you're ready to work? We can help you with introductions and finding the right startups. We can give the startups direct inputs that is not from you into the startup. So, hey, you can't charge $200,000 for a pilot, but they can sign off on $9,999 without going to procurement. Why don't you try something like that for a test? We can help corporations learn the culture of startups or making decisions quicker, and we do that in many ways. For Colgate-Palmolive, I hosted 50 of their top executives, including the CEO, and I made them watch in groups of 5, 10 startups pitch. I made them pick the favorite startup they had and pitch it to the group. And that idea, or that fear of pitching a new idea without any prep, the way startups do it time and time again, as we see in elevator pitches, was quite scary. And they took ownership of this idea when pitching it to their CEO. And because of that, I was able to get more traction on these startups than before. And they took this experience back and worked with startups more and more in the future. And we do a lot of things like this for our partners. What makes Plug and Play different is the strength we have through our global reach. We have tried to build a strong brand in order to bring corporations. We have seen the insights of hundreds and hundreds of corporations, and we can't share those directly, but coming to our events, you see what's going on. The ecosystem we have built includes the top investors of the world and some of the founders that have created billion-dollar companies. And of course, a corporation doesn't understand the startup world. And what's most important is the startup good for me? What's important is, will the startup be alive in 2 years if I'm working with them today? It's not just necessary to find a good startup for you. You need to find a good startup first and then see if it's relevant. And our experience looking at startups is what helps us do that. What we do for our partners is we create real live value. The value we created for BNP in Paris includes 37 startups accelerated. We have built a lab for them inside of Station F. We actually started off in their headquarters. But after 3 years of working together, we have 14 commercialized agreements, which means a startup is part of BNP. It is actually being used by BNP for all of its customers. And all of the business units of BNP are now involved in our program. We have done the same for Mercedes. We have created a program called Startup Autobahn in Stuttgart. It is not easy to get startups to go to Stuttgart, but because of our ecosystem, we're able to do it. We have over 25 engaged partners in this program, and from these 25, we have 432 business units engaged. Because getting one innovation team involved with us isn't enough. To change a corporation, we have to get legal involved, HR, and everything, or it's not actually creating real change. In the automotive space, it is a little bit harder to get startups into a car, but hopefully we'll see the first fruits of our work in the next few years. Panasonic has used us on 7 different industries. My favorite quote from Panasonic was, "We haven't innovated since VHS," because Panasonic has always been the same. But we've worked together to create services for them to sell to their partners. So they whitelist some of our startups, and they use them to become more innovative when they are selling to their customers. And we have a team of 3 that are full-time working with Plug and Play. They have a lab of 30 people in our building, and down the street, they have 3,000 employees. So they believe it is valuable enough to put a team in our building in order to change the culture of Panasonic. Thank you so much. If you want to know anything more about us, we're having an event at the end of November about smart cities and about fintech. Please join us, and we're happy to host you. During this time, you'll see startups from the food event, from retail, from smart cities, and from fintech. And it'll be a great place to learn more. Thank you so much for your time, and please enjoy the rest of the conference.